Welcome back, dear friends, for this Dhamma Sutta study program with Dhammadharani Monastery. The sutta that I have selected for you this week is called the Sixfold Purification, or the Cha Ayya Sobhana Sutta. Cha means six, Ayya means higher or special, and Sobhana means to wash or purify. I selected this sutta because it in part overlaps with what we were discussing last week about the 10 courses of wholesome action, including the very beautiful and uplifting descriptions about wholesome and harmonious speech. And then that was how I reviewed this sutta together with many other ones that had that same description about harmonious speech. But this sutta is a profound and deep description of where the complete inner peace of enlightenment arises from. To have such equanimity that could not be disturbed by anything at all. And so because of that, I thought that that would be also good for us to review. So I'm now going to be sharing the sutta with you. Okay, here we go. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove on Atapindika's monastery. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: take a mendicant who declares enlightenment by saying, I understand. Rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There is no return to any state of existence. You should neither approve nor dismiss that mendicant's statement. Rather, you should question them. You should say, Reverend Avuso, these four kinds of expression have been rightly explained by the Blessed One who knows and sees, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha. What for? One speaks of the seen as seen, the heard as heard, the thought or thought, and the known as known. This set of four ideas appears in quite a few different places. And I always heard of it as being simply referring to just taking the mere experience at its bare essential without adding any proliferation or concepts on top of it. But just reading it this time in terms of Bhikkhu Sujata's translation, he has a really wonderful footnote in which he explains that this particular list of 4 comes from an earlier tradition, and it has to do with some kind of like religious ideas that people can cling to. Thank you. My drink. People can cling to them. They can become obsessed. They can reify. They can make it into. They're starting out looking for liberation, and the different aspects of their spiritual quest becomes converted into catechism and dogma that then they are clinging to, which is a basis for getting into quarrels and arguments. He said that in this list, what is seen is not about just the eye and the visual object. It's referring to seeing about a Buddha or seeing a guru or seeing an enlightened person. In the previous traditions, they thought that enlightened gurus had such power that if you only saw them, that this could lead to your liberation. Even in modern times, on one occasion, I had the opportunity of meeting a bhikkhu who was reputed to be an Arahant. And the people who were sort of saying, oh, he's an Arahant, it's going to be so beneficial. This will help you for your entire life. Just to have the opportunity to see this bhikkhu because he's an Arahant. It's a wonderful good luck and good fortune to meet an Arahant. And so one who's a Buddha or one who's enlightened may have the wonderful skill of teaching, of being able to encompass your mind with their mind and to understand what you need just in that moment in order for you to, to awaken. And so Arahants do have extraordinary powers as teachers to assist and facilitate awakening, but it's not a magic power. And then in the other sutta, this list also comes up in number 1 of the middle-length discourses, which is called the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, or the root of all things. There it speaks about remembering that which is seen. So if you saw a guru or if you saw an Arahant, you would remember it for the rest of your life. And then, but that memory can become, like a war story, or like it can become sort of like as you keep holding it onto the memory, it can become in a certain way kind of like degraded, and it just becomes like a faded photograph of the real experience. And just clinging onto that memory is not the thing that's going to liberate you. And in fact, if you're clinging to it, it's the opposite. So what is seen is referring to having seen an enlightened teacher. And then when it talks about the herd, okay, here's a question. Would you mind talking to the mic?
How do you know when someone is an Arahant? Yeah, because you said you met one.
When it comes to 50 or 60 people instead of just by myself, because it has the reputation of being an Arahant. That one, it was very nice, and it was really pleasant. And inspiring speaking to him, but at that time, I would not have had the discernment to, apart from what was said and what was said about him. I at that point wouldn't have the ability to make that determination. So one who is an Arahant could recognize another Arahant.
Where you were able to recognize that he was.
Yes. Even entire religions are based on the memory of something, of having seen the founder of the religion. Think how many religions are based on clinging to that memory. Even, here we are, clinging to the memory of the Buddha. But if we make it into an icon, uh, it could be the base of clinging to views. If I was to say, that like Buddha is better than Jesus or something like that, that would be, I've got I've got it the wrong way. If I have any kind of a thought like that. Uh, so the next of the four is the herd, and the herd is referred to hearing the suttas. So if you take that the wrong way and you make it the basis of clinging to views, then you can argue about whether or not certain suttas are authentic, or whether they have been misremembered and errors have crept into the suttas, or whether somebody who takes a historical logic and thinks that the suttas could have been modified through time is a faithless and a disreputable person who's ruining the suttas with their scholarship, and uh, uh, many other ways that the teachings that are heard, again, the teachings, the suttas, what we hear, is so beneficial, so helpful, so useful. So just reciting one sutta over and over again, gradually over the period of years, the meaning of that sutta sinks into the heart, and as we get it memorized, we have a chance to integrate how what we were able to know through our own direct experience matches or doesn't match with an understanding of the words that we heard in the sutta. So all those things are good, but clinging to it, making it into a concept, making it into identity, making it into the basis for quarreling is the wrong way to take it. And then taking the thought as a thought. In a lot of translations, they couldn't quite understand what this meant, and they translated it as what is experienced as experienced. But according to Bhante Sujata's footnote, he's comparing it with the previous Vedic traditions, and that's referring to the concepts, the ideals of the Dhamma, like the philosophical ideas. So we were speaking before about anicca. If anicca or impermanence becomes merely a verbal concept, even with something as subtle and profound as anicca, you can make it into like a kind of a raft or something, and you're clinging onto it to stay afloat, and having that as a catechism, and then having it as a base for disputing because of clinging, then you've got it the wrong way. And then the last one is the known as the known, and that's referring to the things that one would know directly through meditation, through samma samadhi. So the experiences within samadhi, even as profound and beneficial as they are, it's still possible to form a concept about it, to form mental proliferation, to make it into something to cling to. So that's how we understand the seen is the guru or the teacher, the heard is the sutta or the teachings, the thought is the ideas, and the known is what is directly experienced within meditation. These are the questions. Now I'm going to come back to reading the next little bit together. These are the 4 kinds of expressions, and we're asking this bhikkhu about it. How does the Venerable know and see regarding these 4 kinds of expression? So your mind is freed from defilement by not grasping. For a mendicant with defilement ending, who has completed the spiritual journey, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, achieved their own goal, utterly ended the fetter of rebirth, and is rightly freed through enlightenment, it is in line with the teaching to answer, reverence, I live without attraction or repulsion for what is seen. That's the guru. I live without attraction or repulsion towards the guru or towards the Buddha or the Arahant. Independent, untied, liberated, detached. My mind, free of limits. I live without attraction or repulsion for what is heard, thought, or known. Independent, untied, liberated, detached, my mind free of limits. That's how I know and see regarding these 4 kinds of expression. So my mind is freed from defilements by not grasping. It's kind of interesting that in the summary, they say that it goes from something basic to things that are increasingly more profound, but I hardly know anything that could be more profound than what we read just there, and I'd like to ask if there are any questions or comments about that. Do you think the day will come that one could be without either attraction or repulsion towards the Dhammas, towards the suttas, towards the Dhamma, towards the teacher, towards the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and even towards the experience within meditation, without any attachment, not grasping? Yes. Brooke is going to answer.
So I have a question. This like experience of not being kind of attracted or averse to anything, do you think it is possible to experience temporary moments of that in this life? Okay. So in that case, I think yes. We experience temporary moments of that in this life, and that is how I kind of feel my belief in the eventuality that that can be more consistent.
Bhikkhu Buddhadasa speaks about momentary nibbana as he's just, I think, playing with us when he uses the word nibbana for that, but he's speaking about these like momentary glimpses of awakening, or even in the sutras, they say you can see sometimes as if you're looking down a well and you can see water. So you know there's water there, but if you didn't have a bucket, you don't know how to get the water. But you know for sure it's there because you've seen it in a glimpse. And it may be that with a stream entry is a definite a glimpse like that, which one may not yet have the ability to stabilize and make it a permanent condition. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Else I'll go on. Saying good, you should ask another question. There are these 5 grasping aggregates that have been rightly explained by the Buddha. What 5? There's the grasping aggregate of form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness. That's called the Pancha Upadana Kanda. So Upadana is, here it's translated as grasping, and Upadana also has the meaning of taking up, the way that a tree or a plant takes up the nutriment from the soil, takes them on into itself. And so then these phenomena can be taken up into what we experience as a self. And form, feeling, perception. What is translated as choices is sankhara, which is sometimes translated as mental fabrications and sometimes as volitional formation, or sometimes sort of more universally everything that's subject to causation, everything that's taught up with cause and effect. And then the consciousness is the knowing faculty, in this case, vijnana. So how does the Venerable know and see regarding these? And if he's really has his defilements ended, it's in line with the teaching to answer. Knowing that form is powerless, abala, fading, viraguna, of the nature to fade away, unreliable, anasasikanti. I understand that my mind is freed through the ending, fading away, cessation, giving away, letting go of attraction, grasping, or mental fixation, letting go of insistence and the underlying tendency for form. Those who live in bodies that are subject to illness and disability and falling apart may find this is sort of like this one is easy. And it could be that it's taught in this order because they give you something that most mature people can at least cognitively see, that the body is unreliable and that it's a much more peaceful, happy life if one is not clinging to the body. I don't mean let yourself go by like don't take care of your body, but I mean let the body go when the body begins to age. It's just what happens. And then likewise for feeling, which is the especially powerful as the proximate cause for craving, whatever is feels good, we want want to get it or keep it. Whatever feels bad, we want to get rid of it or kill it or destroy it. Whatever feels bad, we want to cover it up with something that feels good. And then whatever feels neutral, the tendency is to not even notice and to be ignorant about things which feel neutral. And then so many people are actually ruled by their feelings. So if something feels bad, like they must get out of it. If something feels good, they must have it. But if they realized how each one of those feelings is actually powerless, fading, unreliable, and if they reach a point of the practice where the mind is free in respect to the feelings, so something feels good and you're kind of, the mind is saying, oh, is that so? Okay, it feels good, and so what of it? Nothing to be done about it. If it feels bad, and the mind is able naturally to say, okay, it feels bad, is that so? No response is required because of the good or bad feelings. Just without feeding into those feeling states and creating a synergy that amplifies and strengthens feeling. Instead, by seeing clearly, the feelings have their own life cycle. Things happening in the mind are very momentary, very instantaneous. Like, you could only even comprehend like 1 nanosecond of experience of something that's purely mental experience. But then feelings tend to cause certain kind of chemical reactions in the material body. And so because of the endorphins or the adrenaline or the other hormones that can be pumped into the body because of feeling or because of the escalated heartbeat or the other material things, then it can seem sometimes that the feeling is a little bit more long lasting because it takes a minute or even 5 or 10 minutes for the bodily changes to settle down after having a strong feeling. But if you know that those are just chemicals, you don't have to pick it up or be tricked. Perceptions. Uh, uh, if somebody thinks that perceptions are powerful, what type of job would they be good at? Well, they could be a politician or a journalist or somebody who's into advertising, who's using psychology to influence people and their perceptions. And knowing that by fabricating perceptions in out in the world, then you can attain your materialistic goals. And likewise, people who are in those kind of lines of work, they might take the pill themselves and also be internally convinced about those perceptions. I don't know if that's really true, that like if somebody's an advertisement writer, let's take, I'll show my age. When I was young, they had a jingle that said that Coke is the real thing. And do you think the person who wrote that really thought that Coke was the real thing? I don't know if they thought it or not. But it had a big impact on American culture at that time, back in the early 1960s. Uh, uh, so, but one who is a spiritual seeker can also become tricked by perception if they're not conscious. If they think that the perceptions that they have on their religious quest, on their spiritual quest, are real, then they can easily take a wrong turn. And likewise, the choices, karma is based on one's intention. So the sankhara is what's leading to the forming of karma. And people whose spiritual path is involved in doing a lot of good karma with beneficial results or happy results, if that's the entirety of their spiritual quest, they could take a wrong turn and think that sankhara is the real thing. And that by means of doing those good karma, they could obtain rebirth in heaven, and think that that's the final solution, which it's not. Consciousness. So, as we're coming along here in the previous set, you had the what is seen, heard, and known, and what's called the known is here. It's the vinyate, which is the past participle of vijanati that's related to the noun vijnana. So in each one of these sets, the end conclusion of the set is about consciousness. And I believe that I'm taking the moral, if you want to summarize the sutta, then the whole, in one sentence, it's that all of the different angles and ways that the Buddha is teaching us to be able to understand and look directly at different aspects of our experience, that each one of these ladders is culminating to consciousness. And consciousness is the one that it's most difficult to avoid making the mistake of clinging and finding a self in the consciousness. That's what I think is going to be like the moral of the story for this, because you got 4 different ways of seeing, and they all end up in consciousness. So consciousness, just for now, I'm calling it the knowing faculty or cognition, the process of cognizing. So consciousness cognizes form, feeling, perception, and volitional formations. And it grasps onto them the same way that the thumb is grasping on the fingers. So form, feeling, perception, volitional formations or mental fabrications, and then the consciousness grasps. It both knows them and it grasps. It's able to grasp onto them. But we must not do that. If we're enlightened, we stop doing that. So then he says, okay, very good. Hooray, you gave the right answer. Now, let's ask another question. What are the 6 elements? Rightly explained by the Buddha. What's 6? The elements are earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness. See, again, it ends up with consciousness on this list. So, in this case, I don't take this list as being really about material elements, but it's really about the way the mind is able to experience the material world. That the mind is able to distinguish between something that's earthy and something that's watery. And then the mind makes those classifications, and then those classifications make the external object into a thing, which has got the qualities associated to those classifications. The I don't find the footnote very useful. This is commentary, I think. A self is based on the earth element is not that the self is the earth element, but the self depends on the earth element like a river depends on the bed of the river. Okay, we can ponder that simile. When we practice developing wisdom and becoming freed from reactivity by having a more intelligent cognitive framework in which we understand our experience. One way to detach from emotional reactions is just to look at things in terms of being an element. So this tea has a very nice, a flavor and so forth, and it's refreshing. And you might even say, I want it, if I were thirsty, I would want it. But if you say it's only the water element, or if one is urinating and the urine seems kind of repulsive, you don't even want to look at it or smell it or something like that, but it's just the water element. So if somebody has insulted you or something like that, then you could just kind of look at that person or that experience in terms of the element. You feel the wind from their voice as they're insulting you. Instead of experiencing the insult, you just there's a breeze going by. It's just an element. So it's a way of detaching in that way. But what it says here about the way to take it is that you should understand that let's see. How do they know and see regarding the elements? If they're in line with the Dhamma, they will answer, I have not taken the earth element as a self, nor is there a self based on the earth element. Elsewhere, there's the meditation to examine the earth element within and the earth element outside with the reflection, this is me, this is not mine, this is not myself. So anything at all that's made up of elements, if you think of it as not owned by you and not yourself, then that means everything in the entire material world becomes not a problem, if you can really see it that way. And that fits very well with the earthiness or solidity of earth, the wateriness or cohesiveness of water, the heat or cool element of the aspect of the fire element, of the movement or energetic aspect of the air element, and then the space element, which is the empty spaces in between the things. None of them are the self. And then consciousness element. The experience of the earth is an encounter between some earthiness, some quality of the material realm, and some kind of activity of the mind or the brain, which recognizes the earthiness and categorizes it as earth. So that's the consciousness element. And then by extending that it's like a metaphor, not me, not mine, not myself. So then you just extend it, and when you come up to consciousness, you don't stop. You should also take consciousness as not me, not mine, not myself. Thus the mind is freed. Then it comes on to another question. The interior and exterior sense fields. Eye and sights, ear and sounds, nose and smells, tongue and taste, body and touches, and the mind and thoughts. And then the particular thought process, in this case, the Arahant would make their mind freed through the ending, fading away, cessation, giving away, and letting go of desire, greed, relishing, and craving regarding that sense contact. Grasping, mental fixation, insistence, underlying tendency. And so this is like the unique thing that is sort of pulled up when it reaches this way of looking at it is especially this relishing and craving, that when sense experiences come up, it's like consciousness is nourished and stabilized by the pleasure that we take in having experiences through the senses. But if we become neutral towards that and we have no more relishing and no more craving, we don't need to keep on having experiences through the senses. There's no requirement for that anymore. If you need more experiences, then you're heading for rebirth. If you don't need any more experiences, then you're not heading for rebirth. And then the last question is going to come to the path of training, but I want to pause here and again invite your questions or comments about if you got a clue what it would be like to be enlightened and to really have gone beyond the disturbance, the self-making, the greed and the relishing in regard to any one of these different facets by which we were able to experience our experiences. So I shall call on Flo first and then Ren second.
Thank you. I noticed this past Tuesday during the meditation then that I was sitting outside and the sun was going down and it was getting colder. And I noticed when we were meditating, I would be like, there is cold. But I wasn't really engaging with it beyond being like, it's there. But I noticed when we stopped meditating that I was like, I'm like cold. And like noticing the aversion to it after the meditation has stopped. And that feels kind of like the seeing the water in the well moment.
Yes.
That was all.
Good. Yes, that's just it. So just for a moment, the feeling was just a feeling. And the heat element changing as far as going from being warmer to colder was just the element. Yes, perfect. Ren.
Thank you. I'm feeling quite stuck and a little troubled because I'm looking and thinking back of the meditation process that I've had, the awareness of sensation, or recognizing there are different elements and whatnot, and all the meditation process basically. And it feels like it's a combination, that awareness of that separation, that cognizing of these experiences separate from not me, not mine, is to me it's a combination of a function of consciousness and certain thought process, to say, okay, this is not me, not mine. I don't know what it feels like to be beyond that. Even when you were talking earlier about, okay, at the very end, to push through consciousness is to say, even that is not me, not mine. I don't know what that means. And I don't know, because to me, I'm still in my consciousness. It's my consciousness and thought telling me it's not me, not mine.
I think it might be good to consider some metaphors about how you react for something that you think is yours, and how you react when it's not yours. There's a story that Ajahn Sona has. Somebody purchases a red Ferrari, which I think is a very expensive car, and very strong sense experience to have one and own one and drive it. And so then he goes to a restaurant, and while he's in the restaurant, he hears a tremendous crash out in the parking lot. And somebody comes inside the restaurant and says, "Would the owner of the red Ferrari please come here?" And he says, "Oh no," and he feels terribly distressed. And then so he goes out there, and he realizes it's not his Ferrari. It was another Ferrari that got destroyed in the crash, but not his Ferrari. So then his feeling toward the crash is completely different when he realized that it's not his. And so just the same way, if I visit another monastery, it's so much more pleasant, because if there's something that's like broken or needs to be fixed, or that is slightly incorrect, I don't have to feel worried and embarrassed about it, because it's not my monastery. Whereas if it's this one for which I have the responsibility, even though I really do try to put aside identification and pride in the monastery, and just take it as being simply a job to do to try to keep things correct. Nevertheless, I can see the things that I still identify with. Like, I still have the tendency to identify with my job. And so, like, if someone comes along and says, "Oh, we don't want you to teach anymore," then, I would feel something emotionally, and it would probably take me at least an hour, if not an entire day, to get through the feeling of grief if I had lost my job in that way, because still, there's something like in me that says it's my job. So find those metaphors for yourself, noticing the difference about how you respond to what's not self, not yours. And whether that can give a hint about what would happen if, like your emotions, you realize that those are just emotions that are floating through the whole human race. They're not really your personal emotions. You're just kind of like dipping into that river. And same thing with consciousness is, it's just a result of a whole lot of other factors in a river that's flowing along, doesn't belong to you.
I think that is the problem I'm in, because consciousness doesn't belong to me, But then why is there such a strong me? There shouldn't be any me.
I believe that it's convenient for beings to distinguish between what is their own individual self and what is someone else. It's sort of like a survival thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was a parent and I had a child, and then when the child is hungry, then I eat. And when I'm hungry, I feed the child because I'm confused about which is which.
Mm.
You can see it would not be supporting towards survival. But,
Mhm.
in terms of survival, the average person really prioritizes their own self in terms of taking care to keep it alive and keep it safe. And
Mhm.
they're much less concerned about everybody else. Unless they're very unusual psychology who's equally concerned and sees that their individual happiness is not really worth anything unless it's, associated with the happiness of others.
So just so that I know I truly understood. So when you say consciousness is not me, that me is really like a convenient term. It's not about this body that occupies Ren. That's not the me that you meant when you say consciousness is not
Right.
me.
It's just,
Okay.
it's something your brain is doing that you experience. But the thing that the brain is doing has one of the things that it does is it makes a self. It makes an apparent self.
Hmm.
And that's one of the activities of consciousness. And this is to say, I'm slipping over into modern Western philosophy that is saying that will be one of the or brain science that's saying that that's one of the activities of the brain. In early Buddhism, they didn't really conceive of the brain in the same way, so they wouldn't have expressed it like that. But the Buddha expressed that the consciousness is just arising as a process because of the internal sense faculties, the corresponding external objects, the adverting consciousness, which is capable of cognizing that type of object, coming together into a instant of contact, and then which then leads to feeling, craving, and so forth, and thoughts, and so on. So then the consciousness is a mental factor that meets with the sense capacities, including the mind capacity to cause the phenomena to be experienced and known.
I think what's slippery for me was that this process of isolating consciousness as like from our true freer self, that last put, I feel it feels slippery whether that's part of the subroutine of consciousness, saying, this is just internal, I don't know, some another layer of consciousness saying that this is not me, but I'm still stuck in consciousness somehow. But
Well, yeah, but
that,
all the religious people thought that consciousness was a separated thing. That that the consciousness was floating around in space, and then it came down and it got into the body, and then a being was born, and that then at the end of life, at the death, the consciousness is going to jump out of the body, and go back to Brahma or jump into a different body, and that the consciousness is carrying along with it the repercussions of karma, so that the consciousness is either dirty because of the previous bad karma, or the consciousness either is or is not capable of being purified in order to escape from the repercussions of past karma. So the consciousness was really thought up about as definitely a thing in a self. The self, the atta and the vijnana were kind of like very, very related. in the way a lot of people thought about it. And so the Buddha is trying to disabuse us of thinking that that's what consciousness is. And he's giving us 5 different pathways to examine, different kinds of phenomena, like the sense objects, the material, the 4 ways of encountering our spiritual path, and so forth. That we can find that consciousness is just another aspect of the process, and it's not. It may be that you don't see the problem because you really don't never believed in consciousness in the first place as being a self. But if you encounter a threat to your existence, you might know whether or not you still have any craving or clinging left, depending on whether or not fear arises for you when your existence is threatened.
Thank you, Ayya.
Yeah. Okay. We can go on with the next and last section of this, which is about the path. How does the Venerable know and see so that he has eradicated ego, possessiveness, and the underlying tendency to conceit with regards to this conscious body and all external stimuli? From the defilements ended, he's going to answer. Formerly, Reverence, when I was still a layperson, I was ignorant. Then the realized one or one of his disciples taught me the Dhamma. I gained faith in the realized one and reflected. Living the household life is cramped and dirty, but the life of one gone forth is wide open. It's not easy for someone living at home to lead the spiritual life, utterly full and pure like a polished shell. Why don't I cut off my hair and beard, dress in ochre robes, and go forth from lay life to homelessness? And after some time, I gave up a larger small fortune and a larger small family circle. I shaved off the hair and beard, dressed in ochre robes, and went forth into homelessness. Once I'd gone forth, I took up the training and livelihood of mendicants. Now comes the morality, which is the peaceful morality, which is not obsessed with protecting one's own existence, which is something that's as renunciation, and that one has become almost indifferent towards whether the situation is supporting or threatening this life, but rather at this stage, seeing that the upholding the morality is far more significant than protecting this life. I gave up killing living creatures, renouncing the rod and sword. I was scrupulous and kind, living full of compassion for all living beings. I gave up stealing. I took only what's given and expected only what's given. I kept myself clean by not thieving. I gave up unchastity. I became celibate, set apart, avoiding the common practice of sex. I gave up lying. I spoke the truth and stuck to the truth. I was honest, trustworthy, not tricking the world with my words. And I think it should be acknowledged that trickery and magic have been part of the practice of religious clergy from ancient times up until modern times. We can see it in so many different cultures, all kinds of sacraments and rites and rituals, and you tell somebody's fortune by breaking an egg and or cutting a chicken and looking at the entrails, or so many different things that are like it's almost like they're doing something that they're saying something that's obviously not true, and it's a sort of a test of how dedicated the person is, whether they're willing to put aside their doubts and make themselves believe something that's not really true, like that the something to do with an egg or a chicken is actually telling the future. So this is something that's a characteristic of religions in terms of their catechism, other set of their beliefs, that sometimes there are elements in the belief system that are actually unbelievable. And sticking those unbelievable things into the religion is a kind of a test that only the people who are really, really faithful would be willing to either believe or pretend to believe the things that are unbelievable. So you can have a religion that's like 90% really reasonable in saying, love your neighbor, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I'm not slamming Christianity uniquely, I'm just using that as an example. And so then you've got many, many things like very good advice, very helpful advice, how to become clear, how to become wise. And then it says, you must believe that there was an original sin and somebody did something wrong 6,000 years ago, and that the entirety of humanity is suffering because of something that somebody else did 6,000 years ago. And thinking that you must believe this literally in order to be a member of the club and qualify to join this religion. So this is the quality of the Buddha, that and those sticking those little elements in, those little tricks into religions, that's what makes different religions to be separated from each other. So one religion has got their own little special trick, and a different religion has got a different little special trick. And it's the thing that's like the fabulous and unbelievable that the different groups believe that it's distinguishing and separating them one from another, and is causing conflict and even so far as wars between different sects of religion. There's a story that Ajahn Brahm tells of somebody who was hiking in the Himalaya mountains, and they met another Australian, I guess, or they saw a white person, and so they got to talking, and I said, "Where are you from?" They said, "I'm from Australia." And so, "Oh, where in Australia from?" And they said, "Well, I'm from Perth." I says, "Wow, I'm from Perth also." And says, and "Oh, what neighborhood?" And, so, "Oh, well, we live in the same neighborhood." And they said, "Yeah, and I'm a Methodist." And so, "Wow, I'm a Methodist too." And then it says, "I'm a some particular brand of Methodist." And it says, "Oh no, we hate those Methodists. We're the other kind of Methodist." And so that the distinctions between religions are supported by putting in these. It's an economical. It's something that anthropologists and sociologists and students of religion have observed. So at least Buddhism has got in so many ways, in so many different places, that the Buddha did not recommend that. He doesn't recommend fables, falsehoods, or untruths in any way, shape, or form. And even if you found some Buddhist somewhere who has got some superstitious practice, if you go deeply, you could never find that the Buddha was recommending superstitions. It doesn't, just the same way you could find a Buddhist who is advocating for war, but he would not be able to find that the Buddha give that advocacy for war or for killing. So this speaking the truth is I think a very deep instruction, and it's not easy to even know what the truth is when we get to aspects of psychology and human experience and different people's experience and how the mind works. If we can have the humility of knowing what we don't know and knowing for sure what we do know, and sincerely trying to understand the truth of each situation as we're able to experience it ourselves through an open mind and through our investigations. And then we may find things which are true, and we can speak up for the truth and recommend the truth. I gave up divisive speech. I didn't repeat in one place what I heard in another so as to divide people against each other. Instead, I reconciled those who are divided, supporting unity, delighting in harmony, loving harmony, speaking words that promote harmony. I gave up harsh speech. I spoke in the way that's mellow, pleasing to the ear, lovely, going to the heart, polite, likable, agreeable to the people. I gave up talking nonsense. My words are timely, true, meaningful, in line with the teaching. I avoided injuring plants and seeds. Now from here, in the 10 courses of skillful karmas, they go over into 3 karmas of the mind. In this particular sequence, which is the sequence about the training, it goes into more details of the monastic training, which are related to the higher rules of the Vena, for which even one who is a trainee who's on the noble path could still have a fault in some of these, but if they had a fault, they would immediately take care of it. I avoided injuring plants and seeds. I ate in one part of the day. I abstained from eating at night or food at the wrong time. I avoided dancing, music, singing, seeing shows, beautifying, adorning myself with garlands and perfumes and makeup, high-end luxurious beds, receiving gold and money, receiving raw grains, raw meat, women and girls, male and female bond servants, goats and sheep, chicken, pigs, elephants, cows, horses, mares, fields, and lands. I avoided running errands and messages, buying and selling, falsifying weights, metals, or measures, bribery, fraud, cheating, and duplicity, mutilation, murder, abduction, banditry, plunder, violence. All of those crimes are given up. This is how the monk became enlightened. So he didn't get enlightened without these things. He got enlightened with these things as the foundation. Then I became content with my robes to look after the body and the alms food to look after the belly. Wherever I went, I set out taking only these things. Like a bird, wherever it flies, wings are its only burden. In the same way, I was content with the robes and the alms food. And when I had this entire spectrum of noble ethics, I experienced a blameless happiness inside myself. Then, next step is about restraint of the senses. When I saw a sight with the eyes, I didn't get caught up in the features of details, so this is a training. If the faculty of sight were left unrestrained, bad, unskillful qualities of desire and aversion would become overwhelming. For this reason, I practiced restraint, protecting the faculty of sight, achieving its restraint, and likewise with all the senses. So before there was a consideration of things that we know through the senses as being unreliable and fading away and impermanent. And now here's further training about the senses to be aware of the dangerous tendencies of the mind to be too involved with sense contact in a way that leads the mind in an unskillful direction. So when I had this noble sense restraint, I experienced an unsullied bliss within myself. So the noble ethics leads to blameless happiness. The restraint of the senses leads to unsullied bliss. Excuse me for jumping around. So the disappointment that we have with the world of samsara is balanced by this happiness and bliss, which is arising from within and sustained by these good practices. And that helps us both to keep our energy going in a balanced and healthy way, and also to have the courage to keep going. Then the next one is what's called yoni manasikara, which is methodically paying attention, or paying attention in a way that looks below the surface to see things in terms of their causation. I acted with situational awareness when going out and coming back, when looking ahead and aside, bending and extending the limbs, bearing the ochre robe bowl and robes, when eating, drinking, chewing, tasting, urinating and defecating, walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, waking, speaking, and keeping silent. So this is the kind of meditative practice that's recommended to be done in all the postures, is this yoni manasikara. We've spoken about this quality before as being one of the preconditions for stream entry. When I had this noble spectrum of ethics, this noble sense of restraint, this noble mindfulness and situational awareness, sometimes that's translated as mindfulness and clear comprehension. Then I frequented a secluded lodging, wilderness, root of a tree, a hill, a ravine, a mountain cave, a charnel ground, a forest, open air, a heap of straw. After the meal, I returned from alms round, sat down cross-legged with my body straight, and established mindfulness right there. Giving up desire for the world, I meditated with a heart rid of desire, cleansing the mind of desire. So every time, if you come to me and if you ask me for guided meditation, I always ask you to let go of the excitement or agitation that might have come along with you as a result of the things that you encountered previously. And what I'm trying to point to there is sitting to meditation, getting rid of desire for things related to the world, desire for the world, desire for all the things in the world. Giving up ill will and malevolence, I meditated with the mind rid of ill will, full of compassion for all living beings, cleansing the mind of ill will. Giving up dullness and drowsiness, I meditated with a mind rid of dullness and drowsiness, perceiving light, mindful and aware, cleansing the mind of dullness and drowsiness. Giving up restlessness and remorse, I meditated without restlessness, my mind peaceful inside, cleansing the mind of restlessness and remorse. Giving up doubt, I meditated having gone beyond doubt, not undecided about skillful qualities, cleansing the mind of doubt. I gave up these 5 hindrances, corruptions of the heart that weaken wisdom. So then the practice of mindfulness is here associated with the giving up the hindrances as continuing the pattern of cleansing or the pattern of purification. So one has purified the morality by undertaking restraint or by undertaking precepts, those commitments, purified the danger of the senses by exercising restraint of the senses. And then purified the mind by practicing yoni samanasikara, or mindfulness and situational awareness. So this is the 4th kind of purification, is abandoning the hindrances. If anybody tries to meditate and they find that the hindrances keep bugging them and they're like even not able to settle, like a whole hour could go by and you couldn't settle in meditation, then you ought to look back and see if you forgot to do the work in terms of those preceding situations. Then he goes to the absorptions, the jhanas, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 4th jhana. Has the mind immersed in samadhi, purified, bright, flawless, rid of corruptions, pliable, workable, steady, imperturbable. And then from the 4th jhana, he says, I extended the mind towards the ending of defilements. So this is how it's done. I truly understood this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering, the cessation, the practice that leads to cessation of suffering. I truly understood these are defilements. This is the origin of defilements. This is the cessation of defilements. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of defilements. Knowing and seeing like this, my mind was freed from the defilement of sensuality, the desire to be reborn, and ignorance. When I was free, I knew it was freed. I understood rebirth is ended, spiritual journey completed. What had to be done has been done. There's no return to any state of existence. That's how I know and see. So I've eradicated ego. That's ego. Okay. Ego is called ahankarma. That's making me. Possessiveness is mind making. Mama karana. Mamkara, making it mine. So I've abandoned making it me, making it mine. And then mana nusaya is the underlying tendency to mana or conceit. So that's what it means here. So then up until now, you could say that the what's experienced when we observe the material elements, for example, and we say, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. To some extent, we understand and can see it that way. But then when we come to this level, the tendency of the mind to create those kind of fabrications is wiped away. It's gone. And if the monk answers like this, so this is assuming that he didn't read this sutta, and he's not just pretending that those are his own thoughts, but if speaking sincerely and spontaneously from his own experience, if the answer that a person gives is in line with this pattern, then, you asked, how do you know if they're an arahant? If that's the answers that they give, and it's coming from their own direct knowledge, then you might say, wow. You could say, good, applaud that statement, and say, we are fortunate, so very fortunate, to see a venerable such as yourself as one of our spiritual companions. That's what the Buddha said. The mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said. Something about this pattern of the gradual training, you may have read it in several different places. But in this particular context, because we've undertaken this idea about the practice of peace, I'm looking at it in a way like, see how a person begins to be more and more and more peaceful, and their peacefulness becomes more and more unshakable the further along they go on this trail. Maureen, what can you add?
I don't know about add, it's a question. What does conceit mean? That was one thing. And then there's an utter dependency on the lay person. I just wondered how that fitted in. Because the lay people who were enlightened. Yeah.
So there are kind of like at various different kinds of external levels, a person can recognize that different things that some people identify with and get egotistical about, we realize that that's not really myself. So I don't identify with my Ferrari anymore. When the time comes that I don't identify with my job anymore, I will have peeled off another layer. When I don't identify with my body or with my thoughts and feelings and so forth, the layers get taken away. And so that's kind of like the making the I making and the making the I and the mine. But then even after all of that has been taken away, there's something residual that's left, which is saying that the person at the center of what's being experienced, or the person on the receiving end of what's being experienced, still seems to be a self. And so there's a subtle clinging that's left even after, like no matter where you look, you can see that's not self, but still there's some way, somehow, that the mind is still fabricating a self. And so that's the last level of conceit. It's compared with the aroma after they've washed the clothes and hung them out on the line. Even though they've been well rinsed, there's a bit of an aroma of soap. And then after it's been out in the sun for a while, that aroma disappears. So so it doesn't mean that saying I'm conceited, and that's what conceit is. Instead, it's more like a more subtle kind of a self making that you can't identify what it's attaching to, but it's still creating a self. As far as the dependency of the monk on the lay people, if it actually doesn't matter whether or not the lay people give anything, if it's a matter of real indifference, and if one has gone completely beyond any kind of conniving and hinting and doing tricks or wishing or wanting or anything like that, or anxiety about whether one will be supported, and only is able to receive what comes along without being without making it any kind of a trade or a barter, then experiencing that dependency on generosity is really a test of how far we've come. I saw a blog post by a monk who he's practicing in, I'm not sure which country, I think maybe Sri Lanka, and the on the particular day, for some reason the people were in the village were busy about something, so he didn't hardly get anything. And then when he got back to the a place where he was staying, the other monks also didn't hardly get anything. And so he offered to share his rice with another monk who didn't get enough. And he was saying it's like totally weird in a Buddhist country to not have enough rice at the end of an alms round. It's like you always have enough rice, but for some reason there was no rice, not enough that day. And so that monk took like 2/3 of the rice away from the monk who had like not enough. And so he had like 1/3 of an insufficient spoonful of rice for his meal for that day. And then he just had to examine, that how he had, whether there were any like expectations or whether there was anxiety, worry, or distress or upset about not having something for the body on that particular day. So the mendicancy does force someone to really purify a lot of aspects of morality and in the mind. We should remember that in ancient India, giving was much more, maybe even in modern India or modern traditional cultures, that giving is such a natural thing of life that if a hungry person comes by, you give them food. And that's like normal existence is if you're hungry, then even if the village is poor, they will share the food that they have. And they'll have a place, whether it's be a barn or a shed or something that a person could sleep, whether it be a bhikkhu or whether it just be an ordinary person. That practice of mutual support is very much like embedded into the culture, and then the monastic practice was arising within that context.
I'm not. I'm wondering though, how does somebody who is a non-monastic go about their daily duties without the diligence? Well, you've got to be diligent about how you grow, like growing the rice or whatever you're doing. The responsibilities that you have to your
Well,
family and everything else as a layperson. But how did those people get enlightened?
they practice the same morality and they practice the same precepts up to that list of those like specialized precepts, like being on a solid bed and sleeping on a low bed and not using money. So they don't practice those precepts, but they practice the 5 precepts. And on the from time to time when they're on retreat or on the Opposita day, they practice some extra precepts like the 8 precepts. And with that, they are completely able to become enlightened. By the time that they were approaching being an Arahant, it might be impossible to have sex with your partner because it just wouldn't work. You might find it like impossible to say, I'm doing this work for you, now you have to pay me. So that kind of trading and bartering would not be possible for an Arahant to do. So an Arahant would not be capable of living the lifestyle of a virtuous householder. They'd have to, they could continue doing work and helping people according to whatever skill they have, but they couldn't require a payment. And we know some householders, I know some householders, one of the donors of our community was trained as a lawyer, but gave up lawyering and became, was sort of running some land as a kind of a retreat center. And she had some friends who put cabins on her land, and she never made a contract or demanded payment from anybody. They just helped out with the expenses. And so she lived without operating in a business-like way in order to, she found that beneficial for her life. But then now this same person is opening a restaurant, and so she has to be very businesslike and charge a fixed price for each of the items on the menu. So, but you can, a householder can definitely become enlightened without taking, they don't have to take that extra group of precepts, but they have to keep the 5 precepts.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Lots to think about with this sutta.
It's wonderful to see you, and I hope you're feeling well.
Yes, I'm okay. I'm hanging in there. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Let me lower my hand. It won't go away. There it is. Okay, and I'll mute myself.
So I hope that this sutta has been of interest and that you may like to read it again later on. We can now close by giving respect to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Subhatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you, everyone, for your practice and your patient listening.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, Ayya.